Hello, 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 and welcome to today's Her Version Impact panel. I certainly hope that you guys are having a fantastic morning today. Get ready to listen in on one of the most powerful and controversial impact panels we have had to date. Um, this month, Her Version is hitting new numbers as usual. We have had over 150 female guest speakers on our stage up to this point. We have over 500 YouTube videos, over 137 audio podcasts, and 643 members in our Facebook group. Be sure to join us at Her Version on Facebook. I am starting our 2-hour panel with a trigger warning today. We will be discussing suicide and self-harm this morning, although this discussion is being done to educate the masses on why, who, what, and how the individuals on this panel today might be discussing their own personal experiences regarding these thoughts or actions along with friends or family members. Please note that we do not advise you to watch if you are in a fragile state of mind that might be easily triggered. I am thrilled to have a female panel filled this month as we talk candidly about suicide and self-harm. Here at Her Version, we are taking the steps needed to create environments where we can speak authentically about our truth on topics that can be hard to talk about. On average, there are 130 suicides per day. Women attempt suicide more than men. However, men are 3 times more likely to die. Although an act of self-harm is different from a suicide attempt, there is a strong association between self-injury and suicide attempts. It seems that as incidents of self-harm increase, the likelihood of suicide attempts also increases. It is seen that women or young females actually have the act of self-harm double that of men or boys. People who engage in 20 or more self-harm behaviors are about 3.5 times more likely to attempt suicide compared to those who have fewer self-injury actions. Self-harm involves a person damaging their body by cutting, burning, scratching, or practicing any other behavior that results in pain or injury. Different motivators can encourage people towards self-harm, such as feeling overwhelmed or numb. Today, or join us as we dive deep into these ladies' personal journeys with family and friends. There's live Q&A for 2 hours, so get your questions in the comment section, and your comment or question might pop up on screen. For those of you that don't know me, I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. If you are new to this podcast, make sure you follow, like, subscribe, and share. Let's jump right in. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for all of you ladies that are here today speaking on this subject. I would love, before we actually jump in, for each one of you to introduce yourselves, starting with Tessa. I would like you to notate who you are, where you're from, what you do, and why you decided to speak on this subject. Tessa.
Right. Thank you, Sabrina, and nice to see lots of familiar faces again. Well, I'm Tessa van Keken, and I'm from the Netherlands, but I lived in Ireland for 15 years, and I do feel a little bit half Irish. I'm a coach, a healer, meditation teacher, social worker as well as profession. And I joined today because of both personal experiences, especially from when I was younger as a teenager and in my early 20s, and I'll say more about that later, but also my professional experience. And I think especially I want to join because I think it's such an important topic. And one thing that came up to me when you were speaking earlier was that thing of like anyone who's listening right now means whatever thoughts you have or whatever you may have done to yourself or tried in the past, it means that you're still here on this earth. So that also, I think, whatever your feelings are around it, you're still here. So I think it's important for people to see that there's support that might help to stay here as well.
Elizabeth.
Good morning. Elizabeth is my name. I am from Philadelphia and I live in DC. I offer branding and social media strategy services for spiritually oriented female entrepreneurs. And this subject for me, very near and dear to my heart, suffered with depression and self-harming habits for the better part of 2 decades, let's say. So, yeah.
Gita, you're on mute. We can't hear you, Gita.
Hi, everyone. My name is Geeta, and I'm a coach, and currently I'm in Atlanta. And I wanted to talk about this topic because the self harm and the subtle signs of it, because I've seen it in my clients, and we'll be discussing more as this conversation proceeds. You would see that actually 70%, according to the data, we see that especially women, they go through these subtle signs and they tend to ignore it. So today's topic is going to be very interesting because, like Sabrina just said, the more so for men, it's for women. And as an female entrepreneurs, all of us who are on this panel and being a coach myself and helping women, we'll try to explore why this happens and how we can prevent it in the future. So I'm very happy to be a part of this excellent conversation, which is primarily based on the female and the women peers. Thank you.
Erica.
Good morning. My name is Erica Shalene Hall. I am living in small town Ohio. I am a manageability expert, author, and co-founder of the Corner Office, and primary parent to 5 living children, my 6th. Why I'm here is because my oldest passed by suicide at the age of 16. And recently my ex-mother-in-law as well. So it is something that has impacted my life. I as well have been a woman who has suffered greatly from depression because of the trauma that I have gone through. So why this subject is because what I do. I help multivocational women conquer and thrive in their purpose by providing them adaptable and tangible tools and the foundations designed to eliminate fog, provide the necessary space to focus while you're going through trauma and life, and create intentional clarity and deliberate manageability in your life, because you need that to be able to survive. And as a surviving abuse victim and griever, I know the tools that help you get through because I'm still here. And that's a victory in and itself. So, good morning.
Thank you for being here, Erica. Sherry.
Yeah, hi everyone. Lovely to be here. My name's Shari Lewis and Frisch, and I'm based here in the UK in Worcestershire, so Shakespeare country. And I'm a family crisis coach, so I work with parents whose teenagers are self-harming. And I am also a ambassador for the Children's Society, which is a big charity over here that speaks for children. And I am here because I'm actually the parent of 2 daughters who self-harmed. So I've experienced that personally myself, and having gone through that and come out surprisingly out the other end, I just felt that no parent should have to go through what I went through and go through that on your own, and then face all those, feelings of guilt and shame and blame that we do. And you beat yourself up that you're not a good enough parent, obviously, because how could that possibly happen? So this is a topic that is just so close to my heart, and I speak about this on any and every occasion that I can. So I'm really glad and proud to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sherry, for trusting our panel here. I know this is your first time with us, so thank you so much for trusting me and trusting the Her Version brand to be able to voice what you have to share today. Renee.
Good morning to everybody on the panel and who's watching. My name is Renee Hill. I am a professor at a university, also a business owner with my husband, Tom Hill. Where am I from? I'm from all over the place. I am RVing currently, so yeah, all over the place. And the purpose for my being here is that I am finally ready to start kind of sharing publicly some parts of my story with having depression and also suicidal ideations. And I also want to hopefully give hope to people who may be having these kinds of concerns or have people in their lives and they just don't understand how could someone, think this way. I want to be able to share and put a face in a personal story so people can understand that, we're still just people, right? So that's why I'm here. Thank you for doing this.
Of course. Thank you. And Shay.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Shay, and I'm currently in Minnesota. I'm also from all over the place. What do I do? I'm a mother, a wife, an artist, and the subject is dear to me because I suffered with it. And then seeing my child start to suffer with it, I was like, what's going on here? My mom was dealing with depression and suicide. Here I am, and then my child. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shay. Again, same to you. I know that I came to you just kind of out of the blue to share your story and some of your journey with us. So again, thank you to you for trusting a stranger, trusting me and the Her Version brand to be here and to allow you to share whatever you feel comfortable sharing. I do want to say that I will have the suicide hotline phone number going across the stage a few times today during the panel. So if you know of anyone or you yourself, it is a 24-hour hotline. So we do ask that you utilize that. I want to start with Tessa with her question this morning. I also want to notate to the audience that we will be taking questions or comments up on screen. So if anything is pulling of you, you can ask anonymously where it doesn't show up with your name. Um, and we're here. We're here speaking for 2 hours today. So Tessa, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. I think the question I would like to ask in a way is twofold, because I think some people have experience for themselves with this, and then others with either family or friends or as a professional. And I think one of the things that, if I look at my own life coming back, that when I was younger and having these thoughts of suicide or actions of self-harm, about like what you needed from people, that it's so hard that people either prefer, sometimes find it hard to deal with it or ask any questions or try to make it better, especially if it's of course a family member or a friend, to kind of wanting to make things all right, which doesn't always happen. So I think for people who have maybe had these experiences for themselves, the question is a little bit like, looking back, like what would have helped? What could other people have done or said that would actually have helped in that moment? And if it's more an experience that you have with your own family or friends, where they may have been the one having these thoughts or actions that they took, or as a professional, like what tips do you have for either for the person, for themselves to ask for what they need, or for the person who has someone in their environment who is suffering with this, and what could they do to help that person?
Can I?
Yes, Renee, please.
In? I am going to kind of answer your question incorrectly. I'm going to talk about what people shouldn't do. Okay. I'm a person of faith, and I have always been, and I still am. However, there are some potentially detrimental ways of sharing that people who believe in God are doing and they need to stop. So the thing that people should not do is to tell a person who is coming to you and saying that I'm depressed, I don't want to live anymore, I can't do this anymore. What you shouldn't do is say, oh, God will take care of it. It'll be okay. Just pray more, right? That can cause a person to feel like, wow, I'm just not a good enough Christian. I'm just not a good enough whatever in order to, and then in order to not be seen as this bad religious person, then they'll go deeper into themselves and not seek help, and or just completely give up at that point. So that's my and I'm saying this from personal experience, that was very well meaning advice, very well meaning, but the absolute wrong thing to say. Just let God take care of it, or just you just got to go to church some more. Not the right way to help someone.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think it is important to also emphasize, because I think most people will say things well intended, but which actually can make the person feel worse. I know for myself, there was a lot of shame. And also, especially when people ask, it means they haven't done it yet. Well, it means self-harm maybe, but suicide, they obviously haven't done it yet. So then to feel as if you shouldn't have that makes it even worse. Yeah. Thanks. Who else would like to share?
I think it's just really important to have an awareness within, say, like our family and close circle of friends, because there isn't, I think, enough sort of like people feeling comfortable talking about themselves to that degree. It used to be kind of like you'd ask me, how you doing, Shireen? Yeah, everything's fine, thank you very much. And it's learning, I think, to say, no, but how are you really doing? And going that little bit deeper, because suddenly there's no escaping, is there? That sort of like the intensity, even though it isn't said in an intense way, but it's kind of like it stops you in your tracks, and it really just makes you think, oh, okay, then I really do need to say something now that I am struggling. And I think that's really important, to have that awareness and look at people and try and read the signs and say, but you're not looking okay. you know can I help or support you in any way? Tell me, perhaps, is there anything that you need, or could it just be a hug, or do you just want me to just sit here and just listen and try not to fix? And I can assure you, in mother mode, that's where you're coming from, isn't it? You just want to fix, put that sticky band-aid on and make it all good. And I think it's also important to realize that actually not everything is fixable, and that's okay, and that healing takes time as well, and that we shouldn't be hard on ourselves, but equally that person who's struggling, they shouldn't also feel like we have that expectation of them to pull themselves together and get over it just because we had a couple of conversations with them.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful, Sabrina.
I actually appreciate that, Sherry, because I'm thinking of myself in those situations. And when Tessa's asking, what could somebody have done? I don't know if I have an answer for that. I do feel as if it's more so similar to what you said, communicating and then recognizing that it's not just going to go away. It's not just, for me, it wasn't, I don't think it could have been handled with just a conversation and a hug. I think that it was a journey that I was on, in situations that I was in, that had to kind of take place. Now, I'm obviously coming from a point of I'm still here. So were my thoughts not as dark as somebody who attempted? So I'm not a person who ever attempted even, but the thoughts were very real. So I think there's different degrees. And I kind of feel like maybe if somebody would have taken the initiative to get me real help, like, hey, I have somebody who's a professional who I think you should sit down with one time. I feel like even just like, again, the conversation isn't going to cure it, but just knowing that somebody cared enough to like set something up professionally for me, I think would have really resonated with me. I think
Yeah.
Elizabeth was up.
I was thinking back to when it sort of came out that I had been self-harming. I think I was about 14 years old. There was like this big to-do in my house and in my family, like, oh my gosh, we just can't believe it. We don't understand. This doesn't make any sense. Like, she's such a high achiever. We never would have guessed. And that does two things. One, it sort of absolves responsibility, which I don't like necessarily, I don't blame anyone, but like, we don't all live in an incubator either. Like, there were influencing factors on my mood. And then the other thing that it does is that it invalidates my response to those external factors.
Can you explain that?
So instead of like me, I don't know, I might kind of be the black sheep here because I want to challenge the idea that this is actually like an invalid response to what might be going on in your life. There is that quote that I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. It is not a measure of success to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And if there is something amiss, like, it's appropriate to respond in a way that's going to get attention. So that, I mean, to invalidate the experience and the action and the expression, as like, oh no, like, you just like, let's just fix this, like, let's just fix the action, instead of necessarily because I was doing this, therefore I have depression. But in reality, it was like a lot more complicated than that, and it took me decades to figure that out, and on my own. So does that answer your question, Sabrina?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think even following up from that, Elizabeth, that was so powerful what Sherry said as well around that, from that it's not so much like do this or do that, but more the like being able to ask someone how they really are and what they need in that moment, because it might be different for every person, but it might also be different in every moment. Like one moment you might need to talk, another moment you just need to be able to cry and be, and without necessarily solving it, as you said, Sabrina, but just to in that moment feel heard and to just be able to be. Shay.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I feel like it's a control. Well, for me, I'm a control freak. So coming from, I feel like the way that I was raised and things, there was just so much control. And then you're not seen because they're forcing you to fit into a box that has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them and their ideas and tradition and all this and everybody else. And so just that control. And I think for me, it would have been nice to be seen and heard. Like you're saying, the invalidation of, well, like, just anything. Like if you have faith, oh, well, then I guess you need to do more, like, I don't know. So for me, the worthiness or the, what's the point then? If I'm never going to measure up, then what's the point?
Yeah, thanks. And I think one thing to say as well, I think for people who, what you said, again, come back to Sherry as well, like that thing of like, asking someone how they really are, to also check in with yourself. Do I have time right now to actually listen to that? Because I think the how are you is a question we all ask. You ask it even while you're passing someone without even stopping, right? So to also see, hey, in this moment in time, if someone tells me actually how they are, can I be there for that person right now? And if not, to also maybe say that to a person, say like, hey, look, actually, I want to be there for you, but I can't right now. Because I think sometimes that's also a reason why people, when you're being asked how are you, you don't respond, because you're not actually sure if the people actually has the capacity to listen to it in that time. So I think that's one thing that could be for people who want to be there for another person, to actually check in first with themselves. Am I in this moment in time able to actually listen to how someone is? Yeah, Gita.
Actually, I wanted to do an extension to what just Sabrina said, because I don't have a personal experience of any of those thoughts, but I have worked with so many clients where I have seen that you have to ask very thought provoking questions. When somebody is going through that phase, they don't need a normal conversations like, how are you doing? Are you okay today? They need very deep conversations, and a trained person, a therapist, or a coach can only do that. Because if the family and friends would have been there to help them out, it would have been already done. But it seemed like you're still living in a family, you still have good
Right.
friends and everybody. So you need a professional person to come in. And sometimes it helps them a lot, because if you don't ask them the right, properly trained, like what the training we get, proper questions, they still are in the same kind of a hamster loop. They're still thinking those thoughts. They are not able to come out of it so easily. So there's some subtle signs we have to look forward to when, like for instance, as simple as that, when somebody has a hard time saying no to something, people would say why. But yeah, when you are seeing somebody in your family who does not stand up for themselves, like these are very subtle signs which we can notice in our children, like especially young teenagers, when they are trying to say something and they are not given that kind of opportunity even to say what they want to say. So so they start building on those things, like just saying, not knowing, just becoming perfect always, just showing and masking, like what Sherry was saying, always showing a different face to the world. So we have to put all together, and a trained person can see through it so clearly when somebody comes to them. We have a training, we know that why a person is doing all those things. But if you are lucky enough to have a good family, which can help you out with that, because even they are not trained, they don't know how to deal with you or the circumstances or the situations. You are like saying, like Elizabeth was saying, she's been going through years, because it's not a day's job. It has been going on for a few, I would say, months or years or something, when you're building on it, something which is not your authentic self.
Yeah, thanks. Erica, I think you want to say something to that.
Um, First of all, this is a really, really tender and topic. It's hard conversations, and I would really appreciate if we really think about what we're saying before we say it. And the reason being is because, as somebody who may not have experienced anything of this nature, sometimes words can come off, and we want to be really careful with what we're saying. Suicide doesn't happen because family didn't do what they were supposed to do. Suicide doesn't happen because we didn't say the right things. We didn't tell them we loved them. Suicide doesn't happen because professionals didn't get involved. Suicide doesn't happen for any other reason than it happens and somebody has passed by suicide. They didn't commit suicide. They didn't take their own life. They passed by an illness. It is an illness and a disease that causes these things to happen for their life to end. And there are many, so many reasons why somebody decides that my life is over. And so there are many different types and categories of suicide, and there's a lot of different pendulums of it, because it stems from abuse, whether it's self-inflicted abuse or it's external abuse or it's society, it's what you've been raised with. There is a lot of reasons. So I just want to, as we proceed for the next hour and a half, that we're very careful with what we say. And remember what perspective and perception you're coming from, please. because you also don't know who's listening to us today. So it's not an answer to your question, Tessa. Just
no, that's all right. Did you want to say something to that question, or are you? No, that's okay. Thanks. Yeah, and I think it's important because I think that's one of the things that can also happen, like whether if you've had those thoughts or if you've met someone else, whatever your experience is with that, whatever you're feeling, it doesn't mean it's someone else's experience either. So that always, again, it comes back to that always asking someone, where are they at, right? What do they need? Because I think that's really important.
100%. Thank you, Tessa, for your question. I appreciate that. I'm going to give the floor to Elizabeth.
This question actually kind of rolls off on what both Geeta and Erica were saying. And I think it might be particularly helpful for parents, particularly. So my question is, what are effective ways, kind things to say that that we can know about and sort of have in our back pocket so that we can be prepared to hold space for our loved ones who are in this situation, but also point them in directions to get better help than simply just unloading on us. Because I mean, I know that it can be a tremendous emotional burden to be on the receiving end of someone coming to you saying, this is what I've done, these are my thoughts, so on and so forth. So that's how to compassionately hold space while also being compassionate for yourself is my question.
Such a good question.
And do we have, yes, Erica.
I think, first of all, it's really important to realize if you are in a healthy space yourself, because you are not adequately equipped to help anybody if you aren't healthy and in a healthy space yourself. Not in an effective way that's really going to make a huge difference. You may help them escape to this level, but to really get to anything sustainable for their life, the person that holds space for them and the places that hold space for them have to be healthy and safe. And so if you are not their safe space, you're not that person, and it's okay to know that. It's okay to know that you're not that person's safe space, and that you may be the reason why they're thinking, I don't have anybody to talk to. Not because you intentionally said anything to them, because they just don't feel safe and comfortable in that space. And so if you yourself don't feel like you're healthy, it's irresponsible to take on somebody else's situation. Mm-hmm. It really is irresponsible. And it is not a bad thing to say, you know what? I'm not that person for you, but I'm going to help you find that safe space in that person. And I'm saying this as one who's lost a child, two has had a child who has also tried and had to literally save her from doing it. Because there's difference between self-harm, suicide ideation, and actual suicide, y'all. And there are things that you can know. And so if you want to be that healthy person, start learning those things. What are the difference between them? Most people who, the statistics, actually go through or will commit suicide, will pass by suicide. I'm still trying to change my language. Will pass by suicide. They know exactly how they're going to do it. People who idolize don't have a plan. Somebody who's going to do it has a plan. It's thought through. It's well thought through. They've put logic behind it, and there is no changing that plan. Somebody who has just idolized it, they're like, I don't know, maybe I'll do it this way, maybe I'll do this way. But somebody who's self-harming is harming to the point of harming themselves, but they don't actually want to, they're not dying. They're not doing it in places where they're going to actually die. So there's differences, right? So to answer your question, one, make sure you're the healthy space. If you're not, get somebody else's too. And then if you're not a healthy space, and even if you are, start learning the differences between these things. If we do not start learning the appropriate language and using the language appropriately, you will never be the person that can help somebody, because it's just cloudy. Because blame turns into this, and then where responsibility should lie, blame is there, and that's not correct. You know, there's responsibility to be taken on all sides, and it's not just the person who's passing or thinking of passing by suicide. So
Thank you, Erica. Yeah. Anybody else?
Can you repeat the question, like synopsis?
It was around being able to compassionately hold space for someone who is in that situation, while also having compassion for yourself, because it's about, you know, obviously it's burdensome. It can be a burden, and also in a way, in a constructive way, that you're not making the person who's coming to you feel that they just unloaded on you as well, because then they're like going to be maybe resistant towards going to seek help from anyone else either. Well, I don't, you know, I think one of the things that kept me very quiet for so long is like I don't want to burden other people with my, like, it is what it is. Like, this is, when someone asks me, hey, how are you? It's like, it's never going to be a different answer, because I don't want to lay that on you.
That's kind of one of the frustrations that I have in building this community, and the vision that I have for the Her Version community, on being able to speak on topics that are so important to be talking about in real time, and recognizing that so many times we don't talk about the topic until we're months or years away from it. So, what is the appropriate conversation to be having when you're going through the situation in real time? Like, how do we do that? How do we feel comfortable doing that? Where do we do that? Somebody, this person here was saying, like, a lot of us don't have access to professional help. So where does one go? You know, what can we do, or what should we be doing, or what should they be do? We can't put it on them. So then do we put it on us? And then how do we make a environment where that is appropriate, or where we have the time? What does that look like? And I'm really stuck here as I'm building this on what is a step towards something that makes more sense.
what you're doing today, right, ladies?
Absolutely.
Because nobody was talking about this. Nobody was having open conversations. They haven't been doing this in a massive amount until recently. And why? Because everybody in the world for the last 2 years have felt what feels like when they don't want to live anymore. The isolation, the complete abandonment of everything that they've known. Their comfort zones are gone, right? So now's the time, because every single person in this world now should be able to say, I have enough compassion in my heart to understand what you might be feeling, just an ounce of it. And that's the difference. And then having these conversations, saying, you can talk to me. I'm not going to tell you, I will be quiet. I'm just here to listen. At any point that I think that you need more, I will take you to go get help. But at this point in time, I'm just going to listen to you, so that it's just open. like what you were doing today. I didn't mean to cut you off, but Sabrina, this is what it takes. This is what it takes.
Tessa?
We can't hear you.
Something came up for me, and then I saw the comment that's there now as well. Like, I don't think I'm
Yeah, we need to address
suicidal,
that.
but I do think about it sometimes when I'm feeling so overwhelmed. Is that normal? And actually, what I wanted to share before was that, Erica mentioned also you have these different, self-harm, thinking about suicide, actual suicidal. I know for me, when I was young and when I had these thoughts, and for me, it was things like trying to, for instance, how long can I hold my breath underwater and things. And I rationally knew that wasn't really a way to do it. But one thing that was for me, I grew up and there was a lot of talk about reincarnation. And for me, it was that's actually what for a long time stopped me, because I was like, there's not a hope in hell I'm going through all this again. If I have to come back and do it again, no way, then I'll just stick to it. So I think also it's important to realize that what stops people can also be something different than, so which box I fit in like, was I officially, was I suicidal, or was I more that I have ideation, or was I more that it was the self-harm and could have gone further than that? To be honest, in that moment in time, I do think I agree with Erica. It's important to, especially as professionals, but even as families, to know a little bit what those are, but also to realize there might be other reasons why someone does or doesn't do it, right? In my thing, that was so strong for me. The idea, like, I felt I'd gone through hell, and I was like, if I do this now, it might mean I have to do it all again. There's nothing, I can't do that again. So I think that's also important to know. But then the thing of this, so for the person listening, yes, there is no normal or not normal. It's how you feel. And to be honest, it doesn't actually matter. Well, it matters whether you go through with it or not, of course, that matters. But it doesn't matter whether you think you would or not, right? It's like, how do you feel right now? It's serious. Even if you know in your heart, like in my case, I knew I wouldn't go through with it. So I actually didn't want to talk about it because I felt I was like an imposter, or it wouldn't be fair on telling people, because I was, well, it's not real, it's not bad enough, because I won't do it anyway. Whereas those thoughts were that bad. My feelings were that bad. So I think, if you feel bad, like whether you would go through with it or not, really think, talk, like see if you can talk about it, Don't compare it to, oh, well, mine is not as bad as someone else's. I only do self-harm with a little scratch. I don't actually have like that. I have my whole body scratched. Oh, I only think about it, but I won't do it. So mine is not as bad. Oh, I only don't. How you feel matters. If you feel bad and if you feel you need something, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter like compared to someone else.
Mm.
And I think, again, for people listening, that's important too, to not kind of go, oh, well, at least you won't do it actually. Because then it invalidates again how you're feeling.
Yep. Geeta?
To answer the person you had just put, the Facebook user, they were asking a question that they are not suicidal, but they do feel overwhelmed sometimes. And I wanted to tell people, please don't name everything as clinical depression. It's a medical term. So depression has been misused for a very long time. I just wanted to clarify, when you feel low, it's very normal to feeling low, because we are all humans. We have our emotions going up and down all the time. But when you're in the low phase, it does not mean that you're depressed. So please find the proper, all the, I would say, prognosis when you call it yourself that you're having depression. Because if you're not having depression, it's just the phase you're going through when you're feeling low, and that is very natural. So people get confused. And in my workshops, being an emotional intelligent coach, I tell them, you have to think, when you are feeling low, is it just the circumstantial, or it's just like something, it is like a very temporary phase in your life? But that does not mean that you're depressed. It's very normal to feel low and overwhelmed. So I just wanted to answer her that you're not suicidal, you're going through a phase. There could be lot many other situations coming up or circumstances, and you're just not feeling good about it and you're getting overwhelmed. So it's okay to be like that, and then you come out of it and then move forward, and that's it. So please, let's not use that word. So, oh, what am I doing? I'm not suicidal or depressed, because these are very heavy words for some people, and this is the reality for some people those who go through these kind of literally in reality situations and feelings and thoughts behind them.
I totally agree with that, Gita, and I'd like Erica or anyone else on the panel who, sorry, Tessa, who can when Erica was speaking earlier, she actually made me feel better because I've always said I had suicidal thoughts. But then something, the way that Erica stated it a while ago, made me realize that I was actually farther away from suicide than I actually thought I was, which actually made me feel good. So I feel like if that pendulum that she was talking about, if we could maybe, if anybody has any more information on that, describe maybe what it looks like or verbiage that we can use to be able to describe where we're at mentally a little bit more, I think would actually like allow people to breathe a little bit. You're still holding the floor. Sorry.
Tessa is raising her hand, and then I definitely want to hear from, yes, Tessa.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly share. I do think it's important, again, to know all these difference between depression and not, but then at the same time, two things. One, there's people with depression that in the end never actually self-harm or commit suicide, and there's people that feel low that actually might end up doing it. So I think it is also important, again, to realize it doesn't matter what label you're getting. How are you feeling right now? And the other thing that I said, there is clinical depression, but there is other forms. I had once, after a really bad breakup, that I, despite all my work I did as a coach and all my education in coaching and social work, and I don't know what, that I couldn't work, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. And I went to counseling, and they said, well, look, you have reactionary depression. And the counselor actually said, I hate the expression because it's not, but it's similar. It's exactly like clinical depression, but just for a brief period of time related to a specific event, but it's all the same. So I do think whenever you feel low or depressed or whatever you want to call it, talk to someone. And if you need help, whether you fall into the bracket or the box of depression, clinical depression, reactionary, or whatever, it doesn't matter. If you need something, if you feel that bad, you need help.
That makes me think of something. I heard a very compelling explanation that depression is a lot like grief. And it sounds like maybe what the reactionary depression was for you was mourning the loss of your relationship. And I love that concept because it begs the question: if you are suffering from depression, what have you lost, or what is missing?
Wow, definitely. That's good.
And then another thing that you had said, how many people go through depression and never have these external indicators or expressions. And I think this might actually address it might sort of tangentially address the question that's up on the screen. Is I would kind of want to challenge the kind of buckets of self-harm action that we're like separating, like, oh, it's cutting or it's burning or this, that, or the other, because I would tend to include a lot of other activities as well.
Like what?
Alcohol,
I was going to say drug use.
Yeah, I mean, any type of addictive behavior. For me, I sort of traded the very sort of blatant action of burning for over-exercising. And then I became a personal trainer for a while. And I had the perfect excuse to walk around in pain all the time.
Yeah, totally.
So there's the anorexia and bulimia. Like, all of these things are, and I think, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. You had mentioned control. There's all about control. It's something like, in some ways, and in talking about, like the actual action of suicide versus suicidal ideation versus self-harming actions, like in some way, I almost feel like the self-harming actions are like a glimmer of hope, because at its core, I believe, at least it was for me, it was scratching and begging for some experience to get out of the numbness. It was, and I don't want to say that it was a cry for help. It was my way of getting control of having no emotional experience. So for me, when I was, the self-harm led to a period of watching my own flesh physically heal. And it was, that in itself was healing for me. And it was something that I could feel. So yeah.
Can somebody give this person a tidbit, Erica?
I think that's an unfair question to ask from anybody. To ask what's going through somebody's mind when they're cutting, it's an impossibility to answer. Even they do not know sometimes what's going through their mind or what's gotten to them through there. Sometimes when you're cutting, you're like, wow, this feels really good. Sometimes it's like, oh, fuck, this hurts. Sometimes it's, wow, look how red my blood is. That's kind of freaking cool. There is so much that goes through somebody's head. It would be like asking you what's going through your mind while you're taking a shower. You don't remember from day to day, different things all the time. So in all due respect, I think that when you know somebody in your life that's harming themselves, I think the biggest question is to go and say, I really care about you and your life, and I would like to know if there's anything I can do to help you in this moment, because I know that you are harming and hurting yourself, and that can't be healthy. And if it's healthy for you, could you please explain it? Because I'm really having a hard time understanding why you would want to do that to yourself. Because I love you, and I know everybody does. Like, why? Not necessarily they're going to be answering it, but then you've said, I know what's going on. This isn't a secret anymore. You can't keep this secret, and I will bring it back up because I had the balls. Like, if you're going to be their friend, be your friend enough to say, I know something's not healthy here, and I think you deserve, and I know you deserve better. And they don't have to be cutting themselves. Like Elizabeth said, they could be starving themselves. They could be addicted to exercise. They could be a sex addict. They could be a perfectionist. Like, they could be overly into something that is just, they've idolized it. It's taken over their life. That is harming to their life. They could be so into their religious beliefs that they're hurting themselves and doing things. What, we don't know. What is it? Self-harm is what's hurting you. So that's such a different definition. What hurts me is different than what hurt Elizabeth. And it's different for Shay, and it was different for Renee, and it's different for Tessa, and it was different for Sabrina. So if we want to do anything, I think the biggest thing is we've got to, one, start giving a language to these things.
Yeah.
Finding the pendulum and saying that, what are the real definitions of some of these words? Like, get it. I'm sorry, I'm going to say your name wrong because I'm so nervous right now. But we're utilizing words. We think that we know what the meaning is because we've heard so many people use them, but yet it's not the correct definition, and we're using it inappropriately. And so then throughout society, we've just adapted a new definition for this word. And so then we all go around saying, I'm depressed. Well, are you depressed? But are you sad? Are you low? Are you grieving? Like, there's a lot of other words to use other than the word depressed. But it's also not wrong to say that depression is a low feeling. Yes. But what, so I think really, Sabrina, the key to a lot of this is really giving ourselves a language that we can all say, we're using the same language. Let's start defining it. And I think the only people that can do that are the people who have gone through it and experienced it. No offense to doctors. Y'all are great, but a lot of times you don't know what the fuck you're talking about because you've never experienced it. You should not be defining these words. You shouldn't. You don't know what it is. You've never actually experienced it. And so I think that's also key, if you want to be the person to help somebody, a lot of times it's the person to help that person is not somebody who's never experienced it before. It really isn't. And that kind of sounds odd, but 12 steps, Sabrina, what do? You're paired up with somebody who's gone through it before to say, I can help you through this because I've had those thoughts. I've been in that low, I've been down there, and I'm going to help you, right? I think that has a lot to do with it.
I need to jump in here. So we would likely not require our oncologist to have had cancer in order to help us. So I'm going to respectfully disagree and say I do not care whether or not my doctors or therapists have been through what I've been through. I credit the fact that I am still alive from having had some excellent care from therapists and from psychiatrists. It does not matter to me if they went through what I went through. They gave me the language I needed to understand what I was going through. And so I don't
I'm
want
very
anyone out
thankful
there.
for you that.
I
Renee,
don't want anyone out there listening to think that you have to first interview your doctor, your therapist, to find out if they have had the same experience. Because if you need help, get the help. And then as you get better, if you feel like you need to someone who understands your specific position because they've been through it, then fine, do that. But if you're struggling right now, please go and get help.
I agree. Thank you so much, Renee. I appreciate that. And Elizabeth, thank you for holding the floor. I had you holding that for way longer than we were supposed to. Geeta, you're up next. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, what's it?
Just introduce yourself and ask a question.
Okay. I really wanted to ask everybody, like, is there age related to when you start feeling these thoughts or something of that's related? Is do you feel that anyone, if you're all an expert what you're doing, so do you feel that is there a particular age associated with when you start to feel low more or high more, or something to do with the age related? Because we have seen a lot of teenagers going through it. So do you think feel like data shows why teenagers go through this kind of emotional ups and downs more than anybody like an adult? So you have an experience or you've seen that or as your clientele or something?
Um, I just to make this the intro to this, I did do quite a little dive for a couple hours on a lot of the statistics, and I didn't notate them all because it's just so long. It's just, there's so much. But I did notice, unfortunately, that females young between 12 and 18 is at an all-time high for self-harm and suicide between 2021 and 2022. So like right now.
Yes, Elizabeth?
I'm only going to speak to my personal experience. If you were to ask like when it started, I can't tell you. I never remember a time that I didn't feel like there was some kind of darkness in my life. Like as young as maybe 4, probably. I was teased all the time. I was ostracized. I had a very hard time keeping friends. I experimented with food deprivation as early as 7 years old. I would skip lunch during lunchtime. So there was definitely like a history of just doing things that, trying to fit in better by changing myself. Definitely just very hard time socially. So I'm sure that had something to do with it. I was 14 when I first started. And I mean, why why does it tend to happen to, I mean, like your hormones are like all over the heckin' place when you're a teenager. Like, the first therapist that I saw, I remember he, first of all, I hated him. Going to him felt like a punishment. But he basically made the assessment that it was cyclical, that I only had lows when it was around my period. Okay. And then he also didn't continue to make appointments through my mother after I had separated from a guy that I had been dating at that time. Probably also an astute observation. But I mean, like, I continued with self-harming behavior in all through high school, into college, up until as recently as like 10 years ago. So I can't really say that there was a particular age. What I'm going through now, and I know some of the ladies on the panel know this about me, Sabrina knows this about me. I lost my mother in March of this year. I lost my father December of 2020. I'm in the process of going through the house, and God, I'm finding these. I don't know if you want to say that they are keys to my past, or if they are, just emotional pieces of shit. But what I'm beginning to realize and understand is that the depression was never mine.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It was never mine. My mother was in rehab when I was 4 years old for alcoholism. She actually kept correspondence that she received when she was like, I have a folder full of letters that she received when she was in rehab in 1987.
Mm-hmm.
In a folder in the bottom drawer. So all of that is to say, like, I don't have a particular age that it showed up. What I will say also is, I was just diagnosed with ADHD on like a week before my 39th birthday this past year, and there are very strong correlations between ADHD and, I mean, they call it an illness of low dopamine, and the dopamine levels dip tremendously around your menstrual cycle. So, like, that's another thing that can be a determinant factor. And then the other thing is, like, we don't know what we don't know. I don't know if I would be alive if I had social media in high school.
Yeah.
I had a very distinct thought that was different from other suicidal ideations, in the sense that I had wished that I had never been born, because I recognized that, like, I already started the game. I'm gonna finish. But no one ever invited me in. I just got stuck here, and I sort of resent that. I mean, I don't anymore, but I was, and in my lowest points, I really wished that I just hadn't ever come Earthside. But if I had, I mean, God, like, I got to go home and leave my bullies at school. Kids today don't get to do that.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
It's in their freaking inbox on their cell phone.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to hand the floor over. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, because I think why I brought up this question, Sabrina, was because it's very important to talk about what are the origins, which age it originated from sometimes, because it helps a person. Why is it happening? And then you can, like in Elizabeth's case, she's went out for a help and she started seeing a therapist. So it can be, kind of curtailed. Your thoughts can be easily, kind of been alleviated from what you have been thinking so negatively for so long. That's why. And statistics show the young kids get influenced so easily with a lot of things, like our circumstances, family, or school. Social media now is the biggest thing now. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, like few days back on CNN, there was a news about how young teenagers get so much affected, especially the young women, from social media. So these are very important topics. We have to broad it out, and you definitely seek help from someone, because it's very important to get out and say that I've been feeling this way for, let's say, acute means like short period of time, chronic means a longer period of time. And being a former scientist, I always keep telling people it's very important that how you perceive a situation, perception of everything is very important. If you're not feeling well, like what Tessa was saying, feelings are very important. You have to be heard, like what you're saying exactly as it is, nothing else, no addition to that. Yes, Elizabeth?
Sorry, I wanted to add very specifically, like, yes, absolutely, to go seek help, but you absolutely have permission to feel what you're feeling.
Correct.
Do
Absolutely.
not, don't judge what you're feeling as something that is wrong or inappropriate or that needs to be fixed, or like the negative feelings that compound with, like, I'm feeling this way, but now I'm wrong because I'm having these feelings. It's like, give yourself the grace to say, this is like, I'm reacting to whatever it is that is in my life, whether it's now, past trauma, whatever. It is valid. You don't need to be fixed. You just need help moving forward.
I know Sherry and Erica next. Sherry, I'm going to let you say whatever you're going to say, and then Erica, you're up next. So just combine that. Go ahead, Sherry.
Geeta, when you were talking about, where it starts from and stuff, my own personal story is my older daughter. She started self-harming from the age of sort of like 13, 14. And she actually sort of like explained retrospectively that even though she was bright, intelligent, and all of those things, she didn't actually have the vocabulary, the words to describe those overwhelming emotions that were raging inside of her. And then she looked around and she thought, in her environment, I go to a great school, I've got great friends, I've got a lovely home, mum is good, I know that she loves me, and yet I feel so awful at times. All I could do was just cry, and I don't understand why, because I should be feeling happy. And that the adolescence is such a difficult age for them, because they've got all of these emotions and these really strong feelings that they can't identify, which may or may not make any sense. And it's where to go with all of that, because of course they use their logical side of their brain as well to sort of like try and understand those emotions, and then it doesn't correlate, does it? Because how can I be feeling like this if my whole environment seems to be good and everyone's telling me that it's good? And also age-wise is that 75% of adult mental health illnesses manifested themselves by the age of 14 or 15. So it really does show the importance of speaking to teenagers and really trying to get them to express themselves as best as they can, but also for us to actually listen. And we should know our children's best of all, shouldn't we? And to look out for those little changes in behavior, and then step in and talk to them and say, listen, is everything okay? Are you okay? Say, like, not seeing you hanging around with your friends anymore so much, or spending an awful lot of time in your room. Do you fancy doing something? Because we also have to get that balance right, don't we, of being the concerned parent, but also not being sort of like the nagging parent that's just always getting at them about what they're not doing and what you're observing and all of those kind of things. And as a parent, that can be also very difficult to balance, sort of like your concern that you just have to sort of like temper a little bit to the actual support and being that go-to person that ultimately is what we want to be for our children.
Thank you, Sherry. Erica?
As far as your question, is there an age related to it? Absolutely not. I think that you can't. I think as people, we love to quantify and qualify things, and so we're obsessed with that, and we would love to just be like, here it is, here's when it happens. And the reason why is because I think it has more to do with our skills that we've been able to develop in life, skill of resilience, skill of discipline, the skill of consistency, the skill of communication, the skill of allowing ourselves to know that we're not wrong for feeling like these are things that have to be taught and learned. And so many people don't have the privilege of learning that because they have nobody in their lives that are teaching that to them. And maybe the people in their lives don't know those skills either, and they're not capable. And so we are not all set up in life with the same privileges. And that privileges aren't just materialistic things or a position. It's emotional privileges, our healthy environment privileges, our genetic privileges. I mean, there's a lot that go into that. So I think it's hard to really say and give a definitive, this is when it starts to happen. I have heard and been around a 7-year-old who has said, I want to throw myself out this window right now. Did they understand what they were saying? Did they really want to? I don't know. She's 7. You can't ever really find that out, right? So to associate a number with it, I think that is just kind of limiting, and we really need to get back to what's behind that, the skill, the maturity level, the emotions, or have they gone through trauma already in their life? That changes the whole scenario. That changes everything. If you're like Elizabeth and myself who've said, I wish I was never even brought into this world, then your thoughts started way, way early because you never felt wanted in the first place and that you belonged on the planet. You weren't supposed to be here. So how can you associate an age from that? It's a feeling that you've had since you were born. Why? Because environmentally, that is what you've been made to feel, that you were not supposed to be in existence. Right? So it becomes very difficult to attach quantitative and qualitative numbers and statistics to this. And it's very hard on people, especially who've experienced it, to have people want to attach so much to it. That is just a difficult thing to go through. So my question for everybody is, because I'm so passionate about changing language and how we communicate, and Renee, thank you also for what you said. I'm very thankful that you received amazing support and that you were privileged enough to receive that and get where you needed it. There are many people that don't, and that's unfortunate. But so if you could magically change the language around what you've experienced or what's impacted you, what would be a way that what would you change? My answer would be passing by suicide. They didn't commit suicide. They're not a criminal. You're not sinning. You are not a horrible, horrible person.
Wow.
You passed by suicide, just like if I passed by cancer or I passed by my genetic illness, or you pass by depression. That's how I would like for us to start changing it, because my son didn't commit a sin. He's not a criminal. He just didn't have the skills to survive social media, bullying. And it wasn't anything that I could have done any better. I don't know that anything could have prevented it. He made that decision. And he made that decision, and that was the end. Okay, so that would be mine. I would like to say, I didn't see the order of hands, so Sabrina, if you could help me. I think Renee definitely was first, but that would be mine. I would like to say passing by suicide.
I want to say first, thank you so much for saying that. I know that we had a message that popped up earlier, and I also just happen to know there's someone watching right now whose son passed by suicide a few months ago. You probably have helped her more than you can imagine, right? So, and thank you for being so vulnerable and for being able to talk about it. Thank you so much, Erica. Um, my comment is just, it's very similar to what you had to say regarding the word suicide. So someone else had also said, I think it was Suzanne, uh, that was popped up a comment that said it took her 2 months to even say the word suicide. And so my comment would be that I would really like for us to be able to say the word, to not keep thinking of it as a dirty word, a bad word, a word that you have to whisper. It is a word. There is a meaning for it. There is a reason why people consider it. And so that's something that I think is really important to be able to talk about what suicide is, why people ever consider it. I know that when I was going through my time of having suicidal ideations, I didn't say the word suicide. I said, I don't want to be here. I just feel like I want to die. And then that, along with that, came all this the shaming that people, how dare you say something like that? We should not be shaming people for expressing how they feel. If someone is able to finally express that, we need to be able to embrace them and say, let's talk about this. And if I'm not the right person to talk about it with you, let's find someone who is. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Renee. And anybody else? Tessa.
Yeah, I also wanted to thank you. And I think there's one thing though that for me was like, I know I worked in disability services a long time where there was always also like things like don't call someone a person with disability, or say differently abled, or say other. And I think there's one thing though for me with the words, when it happened for me, I couldn't care less what people said or how they talked about it. It was the intention they did it with. And I think for me it's twofold. I think it is really important because I know that for a lot of people it matters how you call it, and whether you say commit suicide or pass by suicide or taking your life or wanting to die. So I do think, since there is people that it matters to, I think it's really important to talk about. At the same time, I think it's really, like we talked about it with depression as well, what label does it have? I also think it's really important to remember that for a lot of people, when they're experiencing it, when they're in the middle of it, it might not matter to them what you call it. Right? That was for me. For me, it was like, I don't care. I care how you talk to me about it, because someone could use the political correct words or the words decided on, but I can feel that they don't really listen or they don't really care. They just use the right words, whereas they might call it commit suicide, but I can feel how much they care. So that was for me personally. And that comes back as well with what we talked earlier about. And that's why I think it's so important. I know this for myself. When someone comes to me with something that I've gone through, I actually always check with myself, am I able to listen to this person based on not thinking, oh, I know what you're going through, because I can't, because it might be different for that person. So I think, like with the words as well, I think it is good to agree upon with people that, like what helps people the most, what makes it easier, what makes it most, what feels right. But also then again, whoever you're talking to always check with them, but what is it for you? Because it might be different for them than it is for me.
Shay, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I did. I feel pretty similar. I mean, coming this far from where I've been, that if I identified with the names that people called me, where would I be? I know who I am now. So you say what you say, I'll receive it how I receive it. Like like right now, like this is my first time doing something like this. So I'm doing the best that I can. Everybody's saying the words the best that they can. But again, it's the intention, it's the feeling behind that, for me at this point, is more important, because that's why I wanted to commit suicide. You guys are throwing all these labels on me. You're putting all these names on here. I don't freaking care. Is a rose a rose? It's a flower before it decays. But then it turns into what? You know what I mean? Like, we're all everything. We're all connected. Like, I don't know. So for me, the words, they are important, but they're not. And just being there. And again, for me, it goes back to control. We're trying to control this. We're trying to control each other, guys. There's no control. I see you, you see me. Hey, we're free falling here together. Okay. Oh, you need help? I can help. Oh, I can't help. Here's somebody that can help. I mean, we're sitting here trying to control all the stuff that we can't control. I don't know how I got here. Do you know how you got here? Why am I here? I don't know. We're all just here experiencing this. So if somebody doesn't want to be here, it's not for me to say, stay. If you want to stay, stay. If there's something that I can do to help you, I will. If there's not, if not, like, it's everybody, that's free will, right? It's choice. We do what we do with this matter, with this energy, so yeah, it's just kind of, let's be love. Let's do that, like, just ancestral, just all the stuff that we as human society are continuing to do to each other. We got to change it here. Like, me hurting me hurts you. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to hurt anymore. People hurt me, so I hurt them. People hurt me, so I hurt me. We're all walking around hurt bodies, hurting each other. So I can't be responsible for you. You can't be responsible for me. I'm responsible for my happiness. I'm responsible for my sadness. I'm responsible for all of those things, And I appreciate this. Because we get to see each other. We get to hear. We get to share this space. We get to heal. We don't have to recount the things that happened to us. We don't. We know. We got to move on from the pain. We got to move on. Move through. Stay there. I don't know. But just be and just, live or not. That's all.
Thank you for that. Does anyone want to respond? And then I have another pretty heavy one coming up. Gita?
Just want to add to what she was saying right now is known as emotional resiliency. Not many people understand. She's basically what she was saying, a law of surrender. You are here right now the way it is, and then move on. What has happened, because your mind is very strong. When I talk about subconscious and conscious mind, your mind is very strong than you can think of. You don't have to keep repeating those loops again and again. And she was very right talking about whatever you feel, you're hurt, the other person is hurt, the other person is hurt, you're hurt. So you're kind of collectively connected. So it's an emotional resiliency. You have to be strong. And it is usually made up of two things: the self-awareness and self-regulations. What self-regulation is, that you have a mastery over yourself. These emotions, yes, they come, and how you respond to them is very important. So I think I like what you said. This was a different aspect to what we were discussing earlier, that you have to let it out, but you have to let it out in certain ways. That's why you need a trained person. They know and they understand, because they have understood the part, what is self-mastery and what is self-mastery of emotions. So, and that's what I was talking to you earlier, just a few minutes back. As it is, take the information as it is, because being a neurolinguistic programmer, I know that NLP helps you a lot, many ways, and that's a part of neuroscience. So there are certain things when the spirituality and the science meet together, and then you become more of understanding of your own emotions. So thank you for bringing that up. That is also another aspect of it, but very, very important. So you have probably achieved that part, understanding of why you are hurting and why other people are hurting you. Thank you for bringing that up as well.
Renee's up. Thank you for holding the floor there. I appreciate that. Renee, you're up. If you don't mind, Renee, possibly including the comments somehow.
So I'm seeing the comments, and I have to tell you, I'm going to be very blunt, qualified to respond to those questions / comments.
Thank you.
I I will not be part of making things worse for someone. So I can't respond. That would be very irresponsible of me. If somebody else wants to, though, I can yield the floor for my question, because I do want those things to be addressed if someone is competent to address them.
You have the floor, Renee.
Okay, so I'll go. In past years, possibly decades, possibly forever, there's been this idea of people who die by suicide are selfish. They've done a very selfish thing. I do not agree with that. I would like to get comments from people on the panel to address how this is not true. So yes, you all agree that it is not true. This is a selfish act. Elizabeth, you have the floor now.
Okay, sorry. It got a little choppy for a hot second. No, yeah, absolutely not selfish, because the overwhelming feeling is that you are a burden to those around you.
Yep.
And removing yourself will be a relief to everyone. That is the core belief. I think that's the core belief behind most of the individuals that we lose. However, it doesn't matter if it's true. I mean, of course it's not true. It doesn't matter if it's true. Like, we all have our own beliefs, the neurological pathways that get well worn for whatever reason or another. And there comes a moment, and I mean, like, I have had these thoughts where it's like, these people would be better off without me. There have been times when the only thing that saved me is my dog. Because what's going to happen? So there's this like weird tightrope line of like, you know, I'm staying here because I'm fulfilling certain needs, but then also like I feel like my absence would be relief for those that I love. So that's, yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Shay.
I initially I'm agreeing, like, yes, me coming from 3 suicide attempts and the last one nearly successful, I definitely didn't feel like it was selfish, but it is selfish in that I was doing it for myself. You know, like I was done. I tried for y'all. I tried to do it and I'm done. So yeah, if you want to call me selfish, I am selfish, but you're being selfish because you want me to stay here. For what? You know?
Shay, thank you for the honesty. Seriously, thank you for the honesty. I
feel
don't
like
see.
I'm kind of like a black sheep because I'm just, again, I'm not here to convince anybody to stay. Like I said, I've had 3 nearly, I don't know what anybody could have said to make a difference to me, but that's me. So like I said, like, go ahead.
What you're sharing is certainly helpful to someone. So what you just said answers another question someone had. Another question that popped up earlier was, what can I say to my friends to prevent them from committing suicide? It was said here earlier that when a person has made up their mind, there's nothing that anyone can say to convince them to change it, right? It doesn't mean we shouldn't try to let people know, I'm here for you. You don't have to do that if you do not want to do that. I want you to stay here. I want you to feel the love, right? But there's not necessarily anything that someone can do to stop someone who's made up their mind. Shay, what you're saying, you're not a black sheep. You're not. You are giving your truth, and everyone needs to hear it, right? We don't have to agree with it. We need to hear it. We need to understand. How do we learn about others' experiences if we're not open to listening to what they have experienced? So I really appreciate what you're sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tessa.
Yeah, just following up from actually what you just said, I think emphasizing it's not selfish, I think it's really important. And at the same time, that doesn't mean you can't say that you would really miss someone or that you would rather if they didn't. And I think the most powerful sentence I once heard from someone was when they said, like, sorry, like, it's like, I would really miss you if you would do it. But if that really is the only thing you think that will work, I respect it. And I think that was so powerful because it was both that really respect of like, and at the same time really saying so, because if they had only said, I would really miss you, please don't do it, then I would feel even more guilt, because then there would be the additional guilt of, oh, now if I do it, then I'm, making you sad. But that dual thing of saying both, that they really, and they were emotional about it, that they really, really showed me how much they cared and that they really would prefer me not to, or someone else. But at the same time, that they also respected me in a way, offered me the support, like not the support actually, but to emotionally support in that. And that in a way made it also more easy to talk about it and to then ask for help. So I think it's not either or in that way, if you like.
Thank you, Tessa. Shay, I hope you saw that comment that just popped up.
Yeah, my
That was
sister.
that was beautiful. That's
That is
beautiful.
beautiful. Thank you.
I think it's time for me to yield the floor. I just wanted to clarify that my comment or my question was more to speak to kind of what Erica was talking about in terms of languaging. So when we say that somebody's being selfish, that puts more shame, blame, guilt on a person, which is why I started by saying, I'm assuming that everyone also feels like it is not a selfish thing for someone to even have those comments, those ideas in their head. And that's something that has been put on us through society for many years, that you're this awful person, you don't care about other people if you even think in this way. I know when I had suicidal ideations, I was raising my son by myself. Honestly, he is one of the reasons that I am still here. It's because I loved him so much, but at the same time I felt like, but he'd be better off without me because I'm not functional.
I can relate.
I want to make sure it's clear to everyone on the panel and who's watching that most people are thinking so much of the ones that are around them, their friends, their family, their pets. And if they get to the point of saying, I can't do this anymore, it is not because they don't care about what you think. It's not about you. It's about how they're feeling and what is going on with them. It is not a selfish decision. It is not a selfish ideation. So I just wanted to clear that up. Erica?
That's why I appreciate that we're having this conversation, because when you say somebody committed suicide, you're saying that they're selfish. And really, when somebody, anybody who goes through that, that means they were selfless. They thought of themselves less than you and anybody else in this world. They did not deserve to be here. So again, like Renee said, let's start using the right words. It's not selfish, it's selfless. And there's no blame in that. Selfish makes blame and a negative connotation. No, it was selfless. And they made that choice. It was their choice, their body, right? My body, my choice, my life, my choice. Maybe we didn't come into this world by choice, but in those moments, we do think that we can be like, well, I can choose when I leave, though. I have the power and ability to do that. So that's a selfless thought. I'm thinking so less of myself and my meaning and purpose on this world. And again, I'm a burden. So thank you for bringing that subject up, Renee, because it is the number one thing that people say. How could they be so selfish? I can't believe they were that selfish. We think it. I thought it of my child. I've thought of other people. How could they be that selfish? And it is a process that we have to go through because we've been taught that it's selfish to do. So we have to correct that language in our mind and in our healing process. And that is why I asked the question I asked is, what words would you want to change? Because language does matter. Stick and stones may break my bones, but words don't hurt me. That's the biggest lie we've ever been taught in our entire life. The words we use matter to ourselves and to others. So thank you, Renee.
100. Thank you, Renee, for taking the floor. I appreciate you. I'm going to shift to Sherry.
Yeah, hi. That's all so emotional and so powerful. And I'd like to just thank everyone for being so open and with what they've been through. And I respect you all for what you shared with me and with the rest of us as well today. So I had 2 daughters who self-harmed. And for me, my biggest achievement, I would have said up until then, was being a mum, being a mother. I just loved every minute of it. I was a working mum, so you do the life balancing act and all of those kind of things. But, I try to see the world through the eyes of my children when they were growing up. You try to protect them. You try to give them, everything that you possibly can to nurture them, and they grow up into these wonderful, amazing people. And then suddenly you discover that they're self-harming. And suddenly your whole world falls apart, because then everything that you thought is perhaps a lie, you then start questioning your own sort of like abilities to, be a good parent, because that's how I based my success then on obviously how my girls were thriving. And the shock when I got the call from school to say that my daughter was self-harming was so the question to everyone is, if you've when you've been through that kind of thing, how did you deal with those feelings of shame and guilt and blame, especially when you feel like everyone around you is judging you and you can't really sort of like talk to anyone, and you just feel so alone and so isolated and you're in that dark place, but of course you're the adult, so you've got to actually then somehow get yourself through that in order to support your child who actually needs you more. Shay?
I got myself into therapy because I knew that my history, my story is in my head. So when I'm looking at my child and she's going through mirror things that I went through, it could have been very easy for me to be that child going through at the same time. But thankfully I was in therapy and I was able to, she's the one that's hurting right now. So I put my thing, like I can understand because I went through, but she's hurting. So I had to remember what I needed. It's different for you because you didn't go through it and you're seeing it, your child go through it. So for you, it's something that you didn't have something to draw on. But for me, I had something to draw on. What would I have wished my parents would have done? What would I have wished the adults or the people around me would have done? And so then I was able to be that for my child.
Well, thank you, Shay. True, and I recognize the difference, and and I say to my daughters, I mean, they're 21 and 24 now, And I do say, you know, this is your story. I have, you know, that's your lived experience, and I have the experience of actually having sort of like witnessed it then. And I do respect what they went through, and that their story is different to my story. So thank you. Elizabeth?
I just kind of wanted to piggyback on what Shay said, on drawing a difference between her situation and your situation, both being parents of children that are going through it, but one being a parent that had a personal experience and one being a parent that didn't. Both parents need to go to therapy. It's not, it is subconscious and unconscious for a reason. We don't know what it is we're passing on to our next generation unless we're seriously examining it. And I don't want to say that to blame anyone. I don't want to make that very clear, because we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. And we in this society have normalized a lot of bullshit. We've normalized a lot of very harmful thought patterns. We've normalized a lot of very harmful lifestyles. And, you know, just as an example, you know, oh, well, my parents spanked me and I turned out fine. Did you? Really? I mean, like, that's just one example of like normalized behavior that we are conditioned and taught not to question, because we're all fine here. So that both parents should go to therapy, because you don't know what you could uncover. You really don't. I don't know if it was Sherry or Shay had mentioned, or I think it was Renee maybe mentioned, ancestral trauma. That's, yeah, okay. It's very real. The egg that made you was in your mother when she was in the womb. And that's true for every single human that's walking on this planet right now. Like, we're all like little Russian dolls of each other. So all of that experience is compounding, in addition to a whole bunch of other different truths and traditions. So like, everybody should go, and like, you have the personal responsibility to undig yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's so true. Teresa?
I actually wanted to say something about the comment that came up from Suzanne about the guilt and not seeing the signs. And I want to say, from the other side, I remember in my last year of school talking to a classmate and telling him a little bit about how I had felt throughout basically my whole period at that school, but also in other things. And I remember his comment saying, oh my God, we never knew. We never had any idea. So I also to say that, like, I was incredibly good at hiding it, at, you know, even when I felt the pain. And I even in that part, I still am. I know I have an incredibly high pain threshold, both physically and emotional. And I remember even a lot has happened in the last couple of months, and a friend of me recently saying, you know what? I can't believe you're still standing and how you're getting through this. But I thought, on the one hand, it was a compliment. But on the other hand, I also realized how good I am in just keep going, just smiling, just having, and again, there is days that I had fun. And even during my whole time of having depression, or when I had ideations or actual thoughts or self-harm, it wasn't always 24/7 bad. So I also did have really good periods, and I did have fun, and I was laughing. I had good times, right? But I was really good at still coming across that same way at the times that I felt inside completely low or depressed, or whatever the official term is, but that I felt I didn't want there's dark sides you were talking about. So I also think, to anyone yes, it's important to learn to recognize signs, but at the same time, if you didn't, it's not, that's also normal. That's also like, it's also, again, if someone doesn't want to show it, and actually, I think I had hoped someone would see it without me showing it, but that was also the realization that it doesn't happen. That as long as I was, for whatever reason, willing or wanting to hide it, people didn't necessarily see it.
I'm going to go ahead and read the whole comment out loud so that we can know what the person's saying. So first of all, thank you for being brave enough to put this out into the world. We on this panel all empathize with you and what you are going through. So the comment is, how do I deal with guilt? I have an immense pain of guilt because I didn't see any signs. Harley was always there for me to listen, support, encourage, and lift my spirit. And I didn't see his pain or depression. I was shocked when he died by suicide. I feel so much guilt that I didn't know, and I didn't see the opportunity to get the opportunity to help him. Guilt at the core feeling is that you think you did something wrong. So how do you deal with guilt? That's what you have to address. Do you think you did something wrong? Did you do something wrong? All those feelings. And when you start really digging in to those feelings of wrongness, badness, you start to realize you don't have anything to feel guilty for. That's the wrong feeling that you're associating with. That's what you've been trained by society to feel. Because I know as a parent, many people made me feel like it was my fault. Right? That's guilt, that I did something wrong. And so when you feel that it's your fault, that's the feeling you're feeling of guilt. And so that's just like grief. You have to work through the steps of it. I do suggest, Susan, please, if you are not at this point in time, please find yourself an amazing therapist. Make sure you feel comfortable with that person, because you need to go through the steps of this. Because guilt is part of your grief process. And it is one of the stages that you need to work yourself through. So at the other side of this, because it's okay that you feel guilty right now, it's really fine that you feel guilty, because it's what you feel, but you need to get through it so that it doesn't consume you. You need to consume the guilt, figure it out. Where is it that you feel like you went wrong? Address those issues in yourself so that you can release it. Because that's what he would want you to do for yourself too.
Thank you, Erica. Elizabeth, did you want to add before we move on?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I feel like I can't, my response to this comment doesn't necessarily address the comment itself, but for anyone who might be feeling like they're in a situation where they suspect so on and so forth, oftentimes the people that are the sort of like pillars of support for everyone else, for their friend circle, the ones that seem sort of uncannily skilled at holding space for very dark emotions for other people, are that way because they've already navigated it themselves. So if there is someone in your life who's just constantly really good at, like, you know, not being fazed by that deep, dark thing that you just shared with them, that's not a coincidence.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I do want to, sorry, Renee, hang on. I do want to just say thank you to those of you that are on the panel today. I also want to thank the audience. We have 119 people watching live right now, 2 hours in. So thank you so much for being here and listening to our stories. And I do want to also just notate that there was a lot of comments. There was a lot of comments, but I didn't necessarily pull them all up on screen. For certain reasons. So I just want to let you know that I did see them, and I do send my love to you. Didn't necessarily just see it appropriate to be bringing them up on the screen here with the ladies. So I'm going to ask Renee if she has something to add, and then we are going to close up the panel, last 10 minutes with Shay. So Renee?
Yes, just very quickly. I saw something the other day that said people don't fake depression, they fake being happy. So to the comment about, or the question about, or the comment that I feel guilty, I didn't see, I couldn't help. It was an intentional keeping it inside so that you didn't see, right? So don't feel like you just were so oblivious that you just didn't know your kid. That's not it. It was intentionally kept from you. Please try hard to release yourself of the guilt.
Thank you, Renee. Shay, we're going to end up with you.
Yes, thank you. Thanks again, everybody, for coming and having me. This is like my first time doing something like this, so I appreciate it. So just real quick, I know I said that I tried suicide attempts 3 different times. First time was 13, 19, and 27. So when I was 27 is when I found out that one was nearly successful. And I had called and I said all my goodbyes. And that's when, and my mom, I lived in a whole other state. My mom called and police came and broke down my door and got me, and I woke up to the psych ward. I found out I was 7 weeks pregnant. So before that, I had prayed for something bigger than myself because I couldn't do it anymore for my family, the religion, whatever. And literally woke up in a bed, in a room, like, how did I get here? And then to find that out, I was like, oh, damn. I can't do this. I'm getting an abortion. Can't do this. I'm a mess. That didn't happen because I really didn't want to get an abortion. I was just scared. And long story short, it is that child. That child literally saved my life. I have a brain, you guys. My brain is good. I did not suffer. I used to have a very photographic memory. I could remember everything. That's the only thing. I took a major overdose. And I might have some physical, whatever, but mentally, I remember the doctor coming and going, you took what? How much? And you're not catatonic, you're what? So after that conversation, that's when I found out I was 7 weeks pregnant because they had given me a medication without giving me a test. And then I had an adverse reaction. So they said, did they give you a pregnancy test? And I was like, I woke up here. I don't know. Then they were like, oh, you're pregnant. Took me off all those off that stuff. And so I'm here. She's 18. She just graduated. I was doing all sorts of drugs. So I was paranoid that she was going to come out, all messed up because literally what I had done to myself. And then, watching all these channels on what can happen, these she has allergies and sensitivities to foods and things and whatever, but that girl is brilliant. She is a light. She is smart. And really what helped me propel and come over to this side. So with that, my question is, has anybody had any long-term or any unexpected blessings coming out of their experience that they would like to share? Or I know it's a crazy question because, go ahead, Renee.
Not a crazy question at all. It's an excellent question. I will say that I came out of this. So being where I am now, and I honestly can look back and think I was a completely different person then than I am now. It's an amazing gift to have, to be able to look back and almost not recognize who I used to be, right? But I do remember what it felt like. So that is a blessing, to know what it feels like to be chronically and clinically depressed, to be angry to wake up in the morning. I remember how that felt. So when I hear people talking about how they're feeling, I am able to have what I believe is an extraordinary sense of empathy and the ability to hone in on the right questions to ask and the right things to say, because I've been there, right? So while I wouldn't willingly go through those feelings and those plans that I had, again, I would not trade them either, right? It's made me who I am. I am grateful to be able to be a person who can potentially assist someone else, if for nothing else than to say, hey, guess what? Therapy can actually work. Or, hey, there's all these resources. Or, let me just sit with you while you cry, right? I am not naturally a person who is, very emotional, right? So, but when it comes to people's mental health and the way that their emotions are, I am almost grateful to be able to be in spaces with people, to just sit with them through it. So that it is, again, I would not willingly go through it again, but I am not upset that I survived it. Thank you for that question, Shay.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you for sharing. And that was one of the questions I asked my daughter last night. I was like, hey, if you were on a panel or, we're doing this, what's a question that you would ask? And she just said, was there a regret? And so I said, for me, there was never. Out of the 3 attempts, I didn't regret that I tried, and I didn't regret that I'm still here, for me. Anybody else? Tessa?
Yeah, I think it's similar to Renee. I do think being able to be there for people, whether it's professionally or whether it's in my personal life, has come from not just having gone through it, but I do think having gone through it has helped me to get to that state of really seeing more from other people, like recognizing even when they are seemingly happy, to go to that space of like to ask further, but also that part of really checking in. What do you need? I think for me that has been the most powerful always. Like, again, like that on the one hand, yes, I can imagine how you might be feeling, but really also to actually ask, but how do you feel? What do you need? And to be there for that person with whatever they need, rather than what I may think they need. And I think that's something that for me has been very powerful, both in my personal life and with people. But also a lot of people, like when friends of mine sometimes talk, for instance, about their kids who are self-harming or who might have ideations or other things, to really see, okay, what do you need to be able to be there for that person if that's what you want, right? If you can, like, what do you need? I think that's been, something that's positive that came from it.
Did you want me to read that question?
Sure.
Okay. So earlier we had a topic on selfishness and whether suicide is selfish and how we in this community feel about that. And it's interesting that this question comes up. As a medical, I was trained to observe suicide and self-harm conditions. They never should be blamed or shamed. They need therapy to stop being self-absorbed, self-centered, and selfish. To take their eyes and their thoughts off them. Yes, darling. What do you have to say, Renee?
You know what? I'm gonna give that over to Erica. Go ahead, Erica.
Sorry, I said Renee, but I meant Erica.
Oh, no, that's fine. Come on, you guys. Let's read them some tea. This is why we have a problem in the world today. You made a statement. First of all, there's no question here. You made a statement and then you blamed people. They need therapy to stop being self-absorbed, self-centered, and selfish, to take their eyes and thoughts off of themselves. There's more blame, shame, and guilt in those two sentences. Oh my gosh, you guys. Anybody else mad? Come on.
Oh,
I'm not going to cry. I want to yell and cuss at you, Barbara, and I'm not going to because I'm going to be really, 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 really
outrageous.
I want to back up. I want to back up 1 second because the very first sentence is, I was trained. Okay, so let's take our commenter out of this because she's simply relaying the things that she was taught.
Oh, wow.
And that is exactly why I
Okay,
said
so let's not blame her. It's what she was taught, and she's just communicating that.
Exactly. Wow. So that's why we want to be respectful. Thank you, Barbara, for your comment. And thank you for pointing out where the problem is. I was trained. I was taught. This is the books that I read. This is what I went to school for. All of those words could be fit into that. We've all heard them, right? I'm a medical professional. This is my expertise. To observe suicide and self-harm conditions, I would really like to understand how you can observe suicide, because once suicide is done, it's done. And most likely there is nobody there. So you have never observed suicide. How have you observed suicide? So I'm going to calm down because I know there's a lot of wonderful women on here who could comment. But first of all, that we do need to read these things out loud. We do need to be angry that this is what people are being trained and taught, and then what they are perpetuating with their voice.
So with that, I also had another question, because I wanted to know, has there been any insights gained in the area of personal responsibility, accountability, and expectations? Because any change, anything we want to see in the world different, it starts with us. So this idea that people need to be trained, that starts with us. That starts with me. I'm accepting responsibility that I feel like people need to be trained in this. So I got to change something in me that allows people to freely be. And we're just going through this experience together. But has anybody else been able to feel the connection, or that it's a human, this is a part of the human condition, part of the human, like, has there been, has there been any insights on that?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
Okay. I said, has there been any insights gained in the areas of personal responsibility or accountability or expectations? Because for me, I expected a savior because I was raised in a religion that's told me that there's a God and a devil outside of myself that are making an influence on me in my life. So go ahead, Tessa.
I'm not sure if it's exactly answer to your question. So if it's not, feel free to say. But I think for me, it was like, I actually really struggled a lot when with things like around, you are responsible for how you feel. Because for me, that created an other level of guilt. Because then I was like, well, if I could choose not to feel like this, I would. Right? So if I feel this way and it's my responsibility, then it's my fault I feel this way. So for me, that created another level of guilt, actually. And what helped me a lot is when someone, at some point, I remember someone said, here's the thing, you actually do not control your thoughts and your feelings. You only control how you deal with that. And that gave me such a relief and freedom, because suddenly I was no longer, it wasn't my fault I felt this way. And it wasn't my fault I had these thoughts, but I suddenly could take responsibility. Okay, well, if I do have them, if they are actually there, then now what can I do to either accept that they are part of my life and that I actually can't get rid of them, that this is there, or to take steps to change it and to actually do start feeling differently. And that was for me so powerful. I think when we take you are responsible for your own life, you're responsible for this, I think it's important to also mention that, there's also things you cannot help. And it's not even whether it's caused by someone else or something else. That's not even the point. It's the point that they are there as they are. And then, but how you deal with it, that is the part where you can take responsibility. And that helped me a lot to actually and that only happened in my 30s to hear that. And that changed my life.
Yes, I had a very similar experience. That's what I was asking, because that was one thing that really depressed me too. Like, yeah. oh, you think I want to feel like this? You think I want to be like this? Like I'm creating this,
yeah.
But now
if
that
you want to be happy, you can be happy. Bullshit. Sorry.
But I know but I also know that is true, Tessa. I also know now that coming in, I'm coming, I want to say 10, 12 years of intensive things that I realize now that I whether, becoming from a traumatic family, I came from a very abusive family, whether or not, I understand that is where I came from, and I didn't start the abuse on me, but I have to take responsibility for my life and for how, like you said, how I respond. Yeah. So it's nice to remove blame out of my daily practices. Anybody else? I just want to say thank you guys so much.
Elizabeth, did you want to add something? You had your hand up.
I mean, Tessa said a lot of what I was going to say. So just to reiterate the concept that the feelings and emotions are information, and it's how we react to, integrate, and then act on those. I could have an emotion about something, about a circumstance, and I don't even have to give the fact that I am sad, happy, depressed, hopeful, excited. I don't even have to give the fact that I have that emotion meaning. It doesn't even need to mean anything in the grand scheme of my life. So where the interrupt comes in is being able to separate from I am these feelings versus I'm experiencing and I have these feelings. And then if all of that is information, as I keep on saying, these are valid responses to a sick society. I'll say it over. I'll keep on saying it for the rest of my life until we all fix this shit. But it's what you do with that. That's the responsibility that you can take moving forward. Can you pull that comment up one more time? I'm sorry. Because I want they need therapy to stop being self-obsessed. So, okay, I want to recraft this.
Before you recraft, I want to just be very clear. I don't care what Barbara Gear has just said. Nobody has had training that says that they need to espouse a belief that people need to stop being self-absorbed, self-centered, and selfish. That is not a true statement. I do not believe it, and none of us on this panel should believe it.
No. What I wanted to reframe was the assistance is interrupting the neurological pathway so that the thoughts are different about the feelings that you're having. That's what I wanted to reframe.
I love it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Nice.
Thank you. I have to breathe for a second. Yeah. This was fantastic. I feel a overwhelming amount of emotion right now. So I'm going to try to close up without losing it. Thank you to the panel. I so appreciate you being here, being open, being normal, trusting me and this platform that we are creating here together. If it wasn't for you being willing to speak openly, then this would not exist. So I would not exist, and this whole platform would not exist without women like you who are understanding the mission of which I am trying to do here. And I so appreciate you being here and trusting me. So for those of you that are still hanging on, watching live, we so appreciate you being here and hanging out with us for the past 2 hours. We had a high of 256. So thank you so much. I hope that you received some helpful information on this topic of suicide and self-harm. I do want to say that if you are having any sort of feelings that, towards this topic at all, to reach out. There is a hotline, which I'm going to pull up right here. You can screenshot your phone. You can call now. You can save it for later. But it's good to have resources. And this is a great resource to start at for yourself. So these women, along with others, have taken time out of their Saturday today. And many of them take time out of a Saturday every month to sit here with these topics that are sometimes very hard to talk about in order to educate and inspire the world to think differently. So if you resonated with any of these ladies, I do know that all of them are willing to connect with you and to speak. And their information was going along the ticker of the bottom of the screen. So feel free to reach out. If you have an amazing story that you would like to share at any time, I do podcasts on this platform 3 times a week, every single week. And you can reach out to me here, or you can reach out to me at herversion.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I am so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and to inspire others. As always, do something awesome today.